Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. A nationally watched Pennsylvania election, COVID-19 and your money. But first, legalizing recreational marijuana. As they say, let's get to it.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, we have many important subjects together, but first, sitting across from me is Charlie Thompson. He's with the Harrisburg Patriot News and PennLive. He's one of the regular reporters that we have on. All right, Charlie, let's get to it. John Fetterman, the lieutenant governor, has been pushing recreational marijuana since the beginning of Governor Wolf's tenure. Yeah. Governor Wolf is now, now he has a partner. Yeah, he has a partner in Governor Wolf. They've called for the legalization of recreational marijuana. So what does that all mean? I mean, talk about what legalizing it means, and then I have another question about what's going to happen in the legislature.
Right. Well, the proposal would be to legalize recreational use of marijuana for people who are 21 and over, much like alcohol.
Right.
And there has not been a specific bill floated yet, but for the first time, Governor Wolf has actually sort of voiced his support for this since the end of Fetterman's listening tour last September.
Correct, yeah.
But this week at a press conference was the first time that he really called on the legislature to pass a program. And he hasn't really put out a draft legislation on it yet, but he did mention at that press conference possibly using state stores as one distribution vehicle for it.
Yeah. Well, in polls that have been done, the Franklin and Marshall College poll last year, we had that a majority of Pennsylvania voters support it, but they don't support selling it in state stores. They think it ought to be in the private sector.
Yes, yes. And I mean, if the administration is really serious enough about this to drop a proposal, we'll have to see where that goes. I mean, some legislators, I know Representative Wheatley has proposed a legalization bill, and D Pasquale, the Auditor General, has talked about the financial benefits it could reap for the state, upwards of $500 million, depending on how extensive a distribution network was. But there's a lot of hurdles to it, namely Republican leadership in the legislature.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's no sense yet that the Republicans that control both houses of the state legislature are going to, approve.
The only sense I got this week was that, they're essentially, okay, next issue. They don't want to talk about it. And I think the spoiler alert is that this is probably not going to get done this fall. I think the significant thing is that for the first time, the governor has actually put it on his agenda as something that he would like to do that could bring much needed revenue for the state at a time when revenues are down.
Right. I want to get to another topic, and that is this big debate over mail-in voting. And can you build in adequate safeguards? That's, there are proposals in the legislature. The governor has talked about it. Everyone has talked about it. So what's the latest on mail-in voting and safeguards?
Well, I feel like this is kind of the natural consequence of, the primary election was the first election where we had no excuse mail-in voting in Pennsylvania, where anybody who wanted to vote by mail could. And a lot of people, many more than expected, took advantage of that because we were right in the heart of the pandemic in the spring. So we had what the number was, 1.8 million ballots cast by mail, and it really overwhelmed the system. It was also the first time that our county elections officials really had to deal with it. So there was a lot of debugging that had to take place in a presidential election year. And that's what this current debate is about, because I think our elected officials, I haven't heard a lot of, inside Pennsylvania's boundaries, I haven't heard a lot of complaints about, or seen a lot of complaints about, was the election fair and accurate? But there was a real worry about how long it took to count these mail-in ballots. And
sure.
if that number multiplies in a general election when more voters turn out,
and they're talking.
They're worried about, will Pennsylvania still be counting ballots on Thanksgiving Day? You know.
Well, they're also talking about the application time. It's a week now you can apply, and that often means the ballots come in late.
Right.
Secondly,
and that gets into the U.S. Postal Service problem.
Yeah, there you go. And whether you should start counting them early before the election day. Go ahead.
So there's a batch of proposals out there. Governor Wolf is going to come to the table yet this week with his own ideas.
Right.
But I know the Senate Republicans called for establishing a 15-day deadline before Election Day for someone to apply for the mail-in ballot, and that is an attempt to kind of ease the concern that, hey, we got Terry Madonna's application for a mail-in ballot. There's 7 days before the election. How can we get it to him and get him to turn it around? Drop boxes are another thing that people are talking about, where you bypass the mail and you have a lockbox that you can put your ballot in at the polling place now.
Right. All right. I want to thank you for coming in. Thanks for the update. All right. One of the most important nationally watched elections in Pennsylvania. We'll get to that in a minute.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, it's a nationally watched Pennsylvania election. I'm talking about the balloting that'll take place in the 10th Congressional District in Pennsylvania. That district is the northern half of York County, Dauphin County, and parts of Cumberland. Sitting across from me is the Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, Eugene D Pasquale. He's a candidate. He's term limited as Auditor General. He's the Democratic candidate in that district. I want to point out that we've invited Congressman Scott Perry, the incumbent, to be on the program. We hope to have him on sometime in the near future. All right, Mr. Auditor General, we typically have you on talking about audits. We're not going to do that today.
That's right.
All right. Why are you running for Congress?
I think Washington, D.C. is broken, and I think my style of leadership can help get this country back on track. People say, look, I've been on this show plenty of times talking about I find problems with government and find practical solutions to fix it. I was tough and fair on a Republican governor. I've been tough and fair on a Democratic governor. I think that type of leadership could be used in our nation's capital.
Yeah. I know there are a couple of issues that I want to get to. Social Security, prescription drug costs, and COVID-19. But what do you think are the salient issues that voters should pay attention to?
I think from when I announced, certainly would have been prescription drugs, health care, climate change. I think those are still critical issues. But clearly COVID-19 and the economy now take center stage over everything, and trying to make sure we're getting people the help they need, small business the help they need, so we can get through this pandemic and people can start to live their lives again.
Yeah. The other aspect of this is the economy. In the polls that have been done, COVID-19 and the economy rank 1 and 2 as the most important issues. So what do you think has to happen to revitalize the economy?
Well, this is another example where both parties are failing in Washington, D.C. The fact that we haven't had a relief package through the whole summer, when small businesses and families desperately need this help so they can stay in their homes, stay in their apartments, try to get their businesses up and running, to at least try to survive until we are through this pandemic. So that's on the economy side of it. And then on the COVID-19, that we've got to be working overdrive to get to a vaccine and making sure that we're getting more testing, particularly for our kids now and teachers that are heading back into school.
Well, as you know, there's a big debate about how quickly the economy should be opened. It seems to me, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that Republicans have argued about opening it faster than Democrats, particularly in this state where Governor Wolf has put it's been health as a priority, and the state has been slowly opening up. So what's your sense about that?
To me, I take sort of the middle approach on this, and that is we need to be, look at things in a smart and strong way. And that is, for the businesses that are dealing with the general public, we've got to make sure that we are probably keeping them more shut down than others. For ones that aren't dealing with the general public, allowing the reopening in a smart way that's keeping the physical or social distancing. People should be wearing masks. People should absolutely be wearing masks. And if more people did that, we could have more of a reopening faster.
Yeah. Yeah, you can hold the mask up. We got mine there, and you got yours, and we wear them. And there's a plexiglass screen.
There's a plexiglass here.
All right, we're going to run to a break, and we come back. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, are they safe given the huge debt that the United States has? We'll get to that issue after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
I'm talking with Eugene D Pasquale. He's a candidate in Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. It's one of the most closely watched congressional elections in the country. All right, Mr. D Pasquale, let's talk about these. There's growing concern about the funding, the viability of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. With the huge debt that the United States has, obviously to fight COVID-19 and do other things. So take it.
Well, I think the recent move to have a payroll tax holiday that even has been talked about making permanent would really jeopardize Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So to me, I understand we want to get money in people's pockets. I'm supportive of that. I just don't think we should be, taking money out of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid to pay for that. These programs are critical, not only for now, but for the future of our country. We have the lowest rate of seniors in poverty in the world. Social Security is a reason for that. We should be strengthening it, not taking money out of it.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is prescription drug costs. In poll after poll, that comes up as a really significant issue. And, some people argue that the drug costs are way too high and they need to be reduced, and finding the right drug. It's not, and it's complicated.
Here's a couple. First, from my role as Auditor General, I took on the pharmacy benefit managers. Recently, as a result of my audit, there's been some legislation signed that's going to bring at least more transparency to the costs. As a member of Congress, what I believe is that the federal government should be allowed to negotiate through Medicare for lowering prescription drug prices. We pay the highest cost for prescription drugs in the world, even when a lot of those drugs come to market with taxpayer assistance to try to help those companies, bring their drugs to market. Look, I'm supportive of a lot of the, trials that are going on so you can try to get better drugs onto the market. But when it comes to Medicare, we should be allowed to negotiate for lower costs. That's something that is a big difference between Congressman Perry and myself, who he does not believe the federal government should be allowed to negotiate for that.
Yeah, there's another difference, and when he comes on, I'm going to ask him about it. He is a strong supporter of President Trump. He has a high percentage of his votes for the Trump agenda. Is that something that you think is critical and important in the election?
To me, I'm running my own race. I've said in areas where I agree with the president, areas where I disagree. And same thing when it comes to Vice President Biden. I'm going down to Washington, if I win this thing, to fight for the people of the district, not a political party. I do think the quote from Joe Biden in his acceptance speech was spot on, which is, I'm the Democratic candidate, when he said, I'm going to be the Democratic candidate, but I'm going to be an American president. To me, I'm going to be the Democratic candidate for Congress, but I want to be a representative for everyone in the district.
Well, there's also this big debate about another relief package, which is hung up in Congress, and it has a variety of things, particularly money that should be paid to people who are out of work, and it was $600 originally.
Right.
Governor Wolf has said, now
Right.
the president has issued an executive declaration about a reduced amount.
Right.
I think it's $300.
Right.
And the governor looks like he said he's going to accept it. What's your position on that?
To me, this is another example of Washington failure. The idea that they're not even negotiating to get this deal done. I understand one side's at 300, one side's at 600. Let's talk it out. And let's get, to me, and this is the auditor side of me, let's find out the actual money that people need to help get them through this pandemic. Instead of, everyone sort of getting into their ideological corner, let's figure out what the actual dollar amount people need and what small businesses need so they can survive. Get them that help, and then we can get through this.
Yeah. And, well, it doesn't look like, they seem deadlocked in Congress.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like, a relief package, which has many aspects to it, doesn't look like it's going anywhere in the short run.
This is something I would certainly tell you with my style, and that is I'd start reaching out to moderates in both parties saying, hey, if the extremes aren't going to get a deal done, let's try to figure something out on our own.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming in. And as I indicated before, Congressman Perry is welcome on the program. We're going to get both sides. All right, coming up, imagine this, COVID-19 and your money. We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
Well, COVID-19 and your money. Joining me to talk about that is Paulette McGinniss. She's the Business and Education Coordinator with Pinpoint Federal Credit Union. Paulette, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I really am excited about it.
Well, I'll tell you, the impact of COVID-19 on all sorts of finances for people is truly unbelievably, it's made it all very, very difficult. So what are the major effects of COVID-19 on people's finances?
With all the layoffs and for the amount of time that it took for the state to get them their unemployment benefits, they fell behind on their loan payments. So we've done loan modifications for them, but it's, they have no money to deposit. So we find it's our responsibility as a credit union with our mission as people helping people to make sure that we're helping them as well.
Yeah, there's this big debate about whether, about evictions and whether, the government should extend a moratorium on that, saying no evictions. Have you had clients of yours, have you dealt with people who've been, literally evicted from their homes?
Our policy is forbearance. So if someone had that difficulty and they were like for mortgages and things like that, we provided a forbearance for them to give them time to catch up, to get money from their unemployment. And we haven't had too much of a problem with hearing about people being evicted because they basically told everyone that they could not evict anybody during the COVID pandemic. Okay,
well, look, one of the things that we've talked about in the past, and it seems a lot more relevant right now, it's always relevant, but, it's a question of how relevant, and that has to do with financial education and whether people can be prepared for recessions. God forbid we have a depression, but you get my point about preparation in your own financial family life and whatever activities you're engaged in. So why does that take on added importance during COVID-19?
We found out through our members, a lot of them, when they got that extra $600, they spent it. So it was our responsibility to re-educate. This is your COVID-19 budget. Anything that you get extra from the government, put it in a savings account, because then you're saving for that particular time in case unemployment does run out, in case there's a lag in the system, like many of them are going to experience from now until the House and the Senate get, what they're going to do. Or I know President Trump has extended benefits until the end of the year, but the best thing to stress is please put it in a savings account. Don't use it as it's your money to spend, because they're going to be looking for money during Christmas. They're going to be coming in for a loan. That's the last thing that should be on your mind. You should have a good amount in your savings account to prepare for those low income times and low income situations.
Yeah, well, you have some really important data here. I'll just read a couple of them. 71% of teens report learning about money management from parents, and 35% say they've learned about the topic in schools. Is that something that schools should pay more attention to, or is that just a family matter?
No, it's absolutely just as much a school responsibility. And that's why we feel as a credit union, we need to get in there and show them the relevance for when they're getting their first jobs or starting a savings account. It's important to discuss with children, even in elementary school, to save money.
And one of the things that the research shows that if parents do discuss, savings and financial management with their children, that it has a positive effect on them in the future.
Absolutely, because when you have an open discussion about your finances, when I was growing up, you didn't talk about it, but you have to have that conversation with your children, because then they understand the value of money. When they do get a little job, or if they get allowances, take the time to open up a savings account for them to explain the pay yourself first philosophy, and that is put a little bit of that in your savings. Yes, you can spend some, but always put it in your savings. And then they realize too, they'll have a little bit to spend when they purchase with their own money. It's more important, and they start understanding how the importance of spending money and saving money.
Yeah, so the important thing is it should be perhaps a combination of the parents and schools providing this kind of financial education, so that in the future, when kids get out of school and they start working, that they're prepared for whatever occurs.
That's correct. And the way we help is by financial reality fairs, which allows them to proceed through a financial game of life, is what I like to call it. And they get an idea of what things cost.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very important. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.